So what happens when I run the Node program inside of the terminal? I'm now running Node, and everything I type, so hello, is treated as JavaScript code. In this case, as a variable that hasn't been defined yet, which causes Node to give us this reference error. When we run Node and don't type anything after it, not passing in any arguments, we're running Node in a mode that's called the REPL. That's REPL, which stands for read, eval, print, and loop. Before we dig into that, let's think about what would happen if we typed in some code here. So say we added woo plus who. Well, in JavaScript, this would concatenate the string woo with the string who, and we get woohoo. And if we take this same code and assign it to a variable, say a constant called cheer, that variable is now assigned the value of this computation. So now if we type cheer, cheer has been assigned to woohoo. So what exactly is going on here? When we run Node and we're in our REPL, we can type in JavaScript code like our cheer. And the REPL responds to this input in some way. It responds to it by reading the input, that's the R in REPL, evaluating it, printing the result of running that computation, of running that JavaScript code, and then loops all over again. So first we perform all of these actions in sequence, and then we loop back to the start, where our REPL environment will be ready to read in the next line of JavaScript. And this will continue until we exit the program with our Control-C key combination, or we type .exit and press enter. So what exactly does the read step here do? It includes reading in our code that we type with the keyboard, but also parsing that code. Parsing means that the V8 JavaScript engine will break down our line of code and understand the role of all the different parts of it. So for example, it will understand that we have woo here as a string and who as another string. We have this plus sign where they're being concatenated. We have an equals sign where the result of this, whatever that is, and it hasn't been evaluated yet, but the parser will now know that this equal sign means that the left side here is being assigned whatever is on the right side. This parsed code will then be run and evaluated by V8, which will give us the result of this line. So it will add these two strings and assign them to the cheer constant. And finally, the result will be printed to the console in our terminal. So when we concatenated our strings, we added them together, and the result of that expression was printed in our REPL. Now, when we defined our constant, we got back undefined, because when we assign a constant, nothing is returned in JavaScript. It's only once we print our variable that we get the value of our string. Woohoo! All right, so it's worth noting that when we're typing code into our REPL, the code that we wrote earlier sticks around. So we could now type cheer, and we would always get back woohoo. I could create another constant, greeting equals hello, and I could call that. But if I try to redeclare cheer, say by creating another variable and setting it to yippee, I get a syntax error, which is JavaScript telling me that cheer was already declared. So we could continue building up larger programs using the building blocks that we've already created. But if we close our REPL and then reopen it, we lose track of what we were doing. REPLs tend to be good for quick testing of little bits of code in isolation and experimenting with how Node behaves. For example, if we're curious what happens when we try to add a number to a string, we could test that out in our REPL. But nobody would use a REPL to write a large application. It's just not the right tool for the job. It doesn't provide a way for us to save our code or separate it into different files. It doesn't allow us to edit the code that we wrote previously. Usually, we'll be writing our code for Node applications in JavaScript files in a code editor. Let's keep building up our knowledge and find out all about how to set up our Node development environment in the next couple of videos. I'll see you then.